She sat in that conference room for 11 minutes. She knows exactly how long, because she counted the ceiling tiles, 12 on the left side, 11 on the right, and a brown water stain in the corner that nobody had ever fixed. Her manager talked the whole time, something about performance, something about the team, something about how difficult this decision was for everyone. Then the offer appeared. You can resign voluntarily, or you can sign a performance improvement plan and see how things go. She chose the resignation. She signed the paper. She packed her desk. And she left the building carrying a cardboard box with a coffee mug, a framed photo, and a laptop charger. 40 minutes later, she was sitting in her car in the parking garage. Concrete pillars, dim yellow lights. She called her mother, and she cried. Not because she lost the job, because it felt like failure. While she was still on the phone, her manager was sending an email to HR. 4 words in the subject line: voluntary separation, no package. HR replied in 6 minutes, thumbs up. The file was closed. No severance, no unemployment benefits, no negotiation. Because in the eyes of the law, she chose to leave. And choosing to leave means the company owes you almost nothing, just your final paycheck. And whatever unused vacation time the state requires them to pay, that is it. What happened in that conference room was not really a conversation. It was a transaction. And she was the only person in the room who did not know it. Let me tell you what those 4 words actually meant. Voluntary separation, no package. When an employee resigns, even under pressure, the company owes them almost nothing. Their final paycheck, accrued vacation time in states that require it, that is it. No severance, no unemployment benefits, no negotiation. Because in the eyes of the law, resignation is voluntary. Voluntary means you chose to leave. It does not matter that the choice was made in a quiet conference room after being told the alternative was a performance plan. It does not matter that your last performance reviews were positive. It does not matter that the company's priorities simply changed. Resignation is still treated the same way. You chose it, and choosing it means the company owes you nothing. But here is the part most employees never see. The company understands the math of that decision long before you walk into the room. According to workforce research, the average cost of an involuntary separation, including severance, unemployment insurance contributions, and benefits continuation, can reach roughly 40% of an employee's annual salary. For someone earning $60,000 a year, that is about $24,000. For someone earning $80,000, it is closer to $32,000. That is the number behind the phrase, leave on your own terms. You are not being offered dignity. You are being offered the opportunity to save the company tens of thousands of dollars for free. And the hardest part about this system is that it targets you at the exact moment when you are least equipped to think clearly. You are sitting across from your manager. Your performance has just been questioned. You are imagining how you will explain this to your family. And someone is offering a clean way out. Of course, most people take it. That is exactly what the system is counting on. Let me tell you what those 4 words actually meant. Voluntary separation, no package. When an employee resigns, even under pressure, the company owes them almost nothing. Their final paycheck, accrued vacation time in states that require it, that is it. No severance, no unemployment benefits, no negotiation. Because in the eyes of the law, resignation is voluntary. Voluntary means you chose to leave. It does not matter that the choice was made in a quiet conference room after being told the alternative was a performance plan. It does not matter that your last performance reviews were positive. It does not matter that the company's priorities simply changed. Resignation is still treated the same way. You chose it, and choosing it means the company owes you nothing. But here is the part most employees never see. The company understands the math of that decision long before you walk into the room. According to workforce research, the average cost of an involuntary separation, including severance, unemployment insurance contributions, and benefits continuation, can reach roughly 40% of an employee's annual salary. For someone earning $60,000 a year, that is about $24,000. For someone earning $80,000, it is closer to $32,000. That is the number behind the phrase, leave on your own terms. You are not being offered dignity. You are being offered the opportunity to save the company tens of thousands of dollars for free. And the hardest part about this system is that it targets you at the exact moment when you are least equipped to think clearly. You are sitting across from your manager. Your performance has just been questioned. You are imagining how you will explain this to your family. And someone is offering a clean way out. Of course, most people take it. That is exactly what the system is counting on. There is a name for this kind of exit. I call it the courtesy exit. It sounds generous. It sounds respectful. Your manager will say things like, "This way you leave on your own terms," or "It will look better for future employers," or "We want to make this as easy as possible for you." Every one of those sentences is designed to make resignation feel like your idea. Because the moment it becomes your idea, the company's financial obligation disappears. But the meeting usually includes a second option, the performance improvement plan. Most employees believe this is a second chance, a chance to prove themselves, a chance to keep the job. But in many cases, the performance improvement plan serves a very different purpose. It creates documentation, a paper trail, something the company can point to later. Because if you resign, the company saves the money. And if you accept the PIP and fail to meet the targets, the company gains the documentation needed to terminate you. Either way, the financial outcome is the same, which means the two options presented in that conference room often lead to the same place: resign now or fail later. And once you see that structure clearly, something important becomes obvious. There is a third option, the one that almost nobody mentions in the room. Most people who refuse to resign choose the performance improvement plan. They believe they are buying themselves time, but they are usually building the company a paper trail. Here is how a PIP designed to fail typically works. The goals are real, but the timeline is impossible. 30 days to reach targets that normally take an entire quarter. Coordination required with teams that are overloaded or unavailable. Dependencies that sit outside your control. You cannot succeed, and that is not an accident, that is the design. Because at the end of those 30 days, when the targets have not been met, the company now has documentation. Failure to meet performance expectations. With that documentation, the company can terminate your employment for cause. And that changes everything. No severance, no unemployment benefits contested. A separation record that reads performance-based termination instead of layoff. The performance improvement plan was never meant to be an alternative to resignation. It was the mechanism for making termination look justified. Resign, and the company saves the money. Accept the PIP, and they build the documentation needed to save the money anyway. Both paths lead to the same destination, but there is still one path that leads somewhere different, and almost nobody mentions it in that conference room. If you ever find yourself in that conference room, there are a few rules you need to remember. Rule 1, never resign in the room. No matter how uncomfortable the moment feels, no matter how strongly they suggest it will look better, you do not make that decision under pressure. You pause. Rule 2, say one simple sentence: "I need some time to think about this." That sentence costs you nothing, but it buys you something extremely valuable: time. Time to understand what is actually happening. Time to think clearly outside that room. Rule 3, do not sign the performance improvement plan immediately. Ask for the document, read it, understand the targets and the timeline, because once you sign it, the process has begun. Rule 4, speak with an employment attorney if you can. Not to start a lawsuit, just to understand the leverage in your situation. Many attorneys offer a short consultation for free, and that single conversation can completely change how you approach the next meeting. Rule 5, when a severance agreement appears, read every word. Do not treat it like paperwork, because that document is not a formality. It is a negotiation. Let me show you how different the outcomes can look. Keisha worked at a financial services company in Charlotte, North Carolina. 5 years with the firm. 2 strong performance reviews on file. Then one Thursday morning, she was called into a conference room and given the same choice: resign or sign the performance improvement plan. Keisha did something simple. She said 4 words: "I need some time." She went home that night and called an employment attorney. The attorney looked at her last 2 performance reviews, both positive, both documented, and he told her something important. A performance improvement plan that appears immediately after 2 strong reviews can be difficult for a company to defend if the termination is later challenged. The next morning, Keisha returned to work. She told her manager she was not comfortable resigning, and she was not comfortable signing the plan. She preferred to remain in her role. 4 days later, the company laid her off, and the outcome looked very different. Keisha received 11 weeks of salary as severance, 3 months of continued health insurance, full payout of her unused PTO, 61 hours, and a letter of recommendation signed by her department head. But Keisha was not finished. When the severance agreement arrived, she did not sign it immediately. She read it carefully. Then she sent a calm email to HR. She explained that her responsibilities had expanded over the past year and that the offer did not fully reflect the time it might take her to secure her next position. She asked for 14 weeks instead of 11. HR replied the next day. They said severance was calculated strictly by company policy. Based on tenure, it could not be changed. Keisha responded politely. She said she understood the policy. She also mentioned that she had spoken with an employment attorney who had questions about the timing of the performance improvement plan relative to her recent performance reviews. 3 days later, HR called back. They could not offer 14 weeks, but they could offer 13, and they would extend the health insurance coverage for another 6 weeks. Keisha accepted. She signed the agreement on a Friday and walked away with a financial cushion that would not have existed if she had resigned in that first meeting. There is something important about the moment inside that conference room. It is not just a legal conversation. It is a psychological environment. You are sitting across from your manager. Your performance has just been questioned. Your identity as a competent professional is suddenly uncertain. Inside your body, stress begins to rise. Cortisol increases. Your brain shifts into threat response. In that state, the mind does not optimize for long-term outcomes. It searches for the fastest way to end the discomfort. That is why the courtesy exit works so often, because resignation ends the tension immediately. You sign the paper, you leave the room, the conflict is over, but the financial consequences last much longer than the meeting itself. The company understands this psychology. They know that pressure decisions favor the outcome that resolves the emotional moment fastest. And in most cases, that outcome is resignation, not negotiation. So if you ever find yourself in that room, remember a few simple steps. First, never resign in the meeting, no matter how strongly they frame it as the professional choice. Second, say one sentence, "I need some time to think about this." That sentence interrupts the pressure. It moves the decision out of the emotional moment. Third, consult an employment attorney if possible, not to threaten a lawsuit, just to understand your leverage. Fourth, when a severance agreement arrives, read it carefully. Understand what the company is asking for, because severance is not a gift. It is a purchase. The company is paying for something in return. A non-disparagement clause, a non-disclosure agreement, a release of legal claims. Until you sign that agreement, the price of that transaction is not final. And that means the conversation is not over. Most people think the decision in that room is about reputation. It is not. It is about timing and leverage. When someone resigns under pressure, the cycle usually looks like this: shock, embarrassment, a quick decision to end the discomfort. Then the consequences begin. No severance, no unemployment benefits, no financial cushion. The job search starts immediately, and every week without income adds pressure. That pressure forces faster decisions, lower salary offers, jobs that are accepted simply because the bills are due. The entire cycle begins with a decision made in a conference room that lasted less than 15 minutes. But when the employee pauses, the cycle changes. Delay the decision, understand the situation, force the company to make the next move. If the company chooses a layoff instead of resignation, the outcome shifts. Severance creates time. Unemployment benefits create stability. Health insurance continues. And the job search happens under very different conditions. One decision creates financial panic. The other creates breathing room. Here is the part most employees are never told. Severance is not generosity. It has never been generosity. It is a transaction. The company is buying something from you. Almost every severance agreement includes the same 3 things: a non-disparagement clause, a non-disclosure agreement, and a release of legal claims. In other words, the company is paying you to agree not to sue, not to speak publicly, and not to create problems after you leave. That agreement has a price, and until you sign it, that price is not final. The fear most people feel in that moment is that asking for more will make the offer disappear. But think about the situation from the company's side. An employee who leaves without severance is free to say anything. To clients, to competitors, on LinkedIn, on Glassdoor. An employee with a contested exit and questions about the company's process is a risk. And risks are often easier to solve with money, which is why the math usually favors paying a little more to close the situation quietly. But none of this is explained to employees before they walk into that conference room. The company has already done the calculations. Their HR team understands the legal structure. Their managers understand how to frame the conversation, and the employee walks in hearing about it for the very first time. That information gap is not an accident. It is the system. The company's advantage is not that they are smarter than you. It is that they have already had the conversation. You are just now entering it. The employee in that first conference room did not know any of this. She counted 12 ceiling tiles on the left side, 11 on the right, and she resigned. But she deserved to know that the offer in front of her was not a courtesy. It was a transaction, and that she had another option. Now you know it. And if you ever find yourself sitting in a quiet conference room with a legal pad and a pen waiting for your signature, you will know that the most valuable sentence you can say is 4 simple words. I need some time.